the federal government should nationalize medical supply acquisition. The states simply cannot manage it. This state cannot manage it. States all across the country can't manage it. Certainly the states that are dealing with the highest caseload can't handle it. But you're hearing it all across the country from states. They just can't deal with finding the medical supplies that they need. And that's why I believe the federal government should take over that function of contracting and acquiring all the medical supplies that we need. Currently, when states are doing it, we are competing against other states. In some ways, we're savaging other states. I'm trying to buy masks. I'm competing with California and Illinois and Florida. And that's not the way it should be, frankly. Price gouging is a tremendous problem, and it's only getting worse. There are masks that we were paying 85 cents for. We're now paying $7. Why? Because I'm competing against every other state and in some cases against other countries around the world. Ventilators, which are the most precious piece of equipment for this situation, they range in price from $16,000 to $40,000 each, and New York State needs 30,000 ventilators. This is just an impossible situation to manage. If we don't get the equipment, we can lose lives that we could have otherwise saved if we had the right equipment. The federal government has two options to handle this. Voluntary partnership with companies, where the federal government says to companies, I would appreciate it if you would work with us and do this. And the president has done that, and he seems to have gotten a good response on a voluntary basis. The other way is what's called the Defense Production Act, where the federal government has the legal authority to say to companies, you must produce this now. It is invoking a federal law. It is mandating that private companies do something, but I think it is appropriate. If I had the power, I would do it in New York State because the situation is that critical. I think the federal government should order factories to manufacture masks, gowns, ventilators, the essential medical equipment that's going to make the difference between life and death. It's not hard to make a mask or PPE equipment or a gown, but you need companies to do it. We have apparel companies that can make clothing. Well, then you can make a surgical gown and you can make a mask, but they have to be ordered to do it. If the federal government does it, then they can do it in a very orderly way. They can decide how many they need. They can designate how many each factory should produce, and then they could distribute those goods by need rather than having these states all compete against each other. It would also be less expensive because it would avoid the price gouging that is now happening in this marketplace. I can tell what's happening. I'll contract with a company for 1,000 masks. They'll call back 20 minutes later and say the price just went up because they had a better offer. And I understand that. Other states who are desperate for these goods literally offer more money than we were paying. And it's just a race that's raising prices higher and higher. We even have hospitals competing against other hospitals. If the federal government came in, used the Defense Production Act, you could resolve all of that immediately.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.